Hello everybody, I am MakkieMon and today I will be doing a building tutorial on the plugin Building Tools by F3X. Now these are my favorite tools to use in building. I probably would not be building today if it weren't for them, and they're very simple, very clean, very easy to use, and user-friendly. I know a lot of other builders like Olaf, Strasta, Skelly, Donut, they all use it and love it, and I'm going to show you how to use them. You can see I've spawned in my starter kit and my size reference, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the move tool. And what the move tool is I can click on this brick right here, and these little tabs, these little circles pop up. And what I can do is go ahead and click and drag them and move them whichever way I want, doesn't matter. I can move it left, right, side to side, up and down. I can move it any way I want. I can also, there's a handy feature pre-built into the F3X program, and I can go ahead and do this. I can move it straight through another brick without toggling collisions, which is very handy in various situations. There's another feature that F3X has is where I can click on a brick and drag it around. I can move it just by hand if I wanted to. Now, it's not as technical as the tabs, but it still comes in handy in some situations. Alright, so if you look over here, you'll notice there are some advanced tools. I click on this brick here, and you'll notice that I'm on global. And what that is basically there is a global axis for the map, and no matter which brick I click on, no matter which way it's turned, they will all move the same way. Watch what happens when I select all of them. They're all moving the same exact way, and that's the global axis. Now, watch what happens when I click on local. The points changed. And now it will move according to the brick's personal axis, ignoring the map's global axis. So when I click on all of these together, they're all going to move in separate ways for their own personal axis. Now, there's also another feature here, this last feature, and that's a very handy feature. What happens is when I click more than one brick, when I select more than one brick, I can click last and say, okay, the last brick that I clicked, let's say it's this one. The last brick that I clicked, I want all of these guys to be temporarily glued to this brick and stay in their designated positions and move based on this brick's personal axis, its local axis. So that's what it's doing. Whichever way I move this brick, these guys will come along and stay in their position. And that's probably one of my favorite features. You also go down here and there's the increment tool. Now the increment tool is your best friend. And why that is because basically, I am telling this brick right here, this is one stud, I'm telling this brick right here to go ahead and move one stud, move one stud, move one stud again. Now, if I want to get a bit more technical, I can go ahead and here click this and type in 0.5. That's half a stud. I'm moving it half a stud, half a stud, half a stud again. Alright, so say I want to get even more technical, I can go ahead and click this and type in 0.1. And now I'm moving at 0.1 stud. You want to get even more technical? Go down to 0.01. And that's a little bit hard to control for new players, but eventually you will learn to use that. So let's go back to 1, since that's a nice even set number. Alright, if you look down here, as I'm moving this changes the position on the map. This is the exact position where this is, and there's designated areas listed by numbers here. And what I'm doing is I'm moving this around the map, but I can also type in here, say I want it to be at 25 by 16 by 66. And now I just moved it to that exact position on the map. And that's a very nice feature that is built in, but I personally usually don't use this in my building. It does come in handy in some situations. Alright, so there's one last feature you can use when it comes to F3X, and this is when you have the move tool or the resize tool or anything open at the time. You can go ahead and click and drag, and that will go ahead and highlight everything. That's just a little extra feature for you guys, and that's pretty much the move tool. So we're going to move on. So let's go ahead and talk about the Resize tool. Now what the Resize tool is I can click on this brick right here and these little tabs pop up just like the move tool, and I can click and drag and increase this brick or decrease this brick. I can increase this brick or decrease this brick as I please. And you'll notice over in advanced options that I'm on normal. What normal is basically I'm saying I only want this tab right here that I'm pulling to increase the brick. Only on this side do I want this brick to increase by 1. And if I click both, watch what happens. Now it's increasing equally on both sides, and that's great for getting exact measurements. You'll also notice down here there's an increment section, and it is the same exact thing as the move tool. And let's go back to normal real quick. So right now I'm telling the brick I want you to increase by 1 stud, 1 stud. And the same thing, I can go ahead and get technical and do 0.5 stud or 0.1 stud, or I can go even more technical and do 0.1, and that's a bit trickier to control, but you'll get the hang of it when you get a little bit more experienced. So let's go ahead and get back to an even measurement. Alright, so we're back to 1. And you'll notice down here, as I was changing the brick size, these dimensions change. These are the exact dimensions of the brick. Right now it's 4 by 5.44 by 4. And I don't like that uneven number right now, so let's go ahead and change it to 5. So now you notice it shrunk on both sides. It took the same exact amount from each side to make this brick 5. Say I want to change it a little bit more, and let's make it 10. You notice that it increased it equally on each side to make this brick 10. So that's basically the Resize tool. Let's go ahead and talk about the next tool. This right here is the rotate tool, and what the rotate tool is I can click on this brick right here, and you'll notice these little circles, these little orbits will appear around the brick, and what this is the X, Y, and Z axis, and the X, Y, and Z axis allow me to turn the brick whichever way I want it to turn. I can move it this way, I can move it that way. It doesn't matter which brick I click, I can move it all the same way. And the reason for that is that over here in advanced options, I am on center. And what center is, it's the same thing as the global tool. They will all move on the same axis according to the map because this is on the global axis. This is on the central axis. And basically, I'm going to go ahead and click local and watch what happens. Just like the move tool, it goes to its central axis, its central pivot, and now it turns based on that. It will turn, each brick is different because it's rotated differently. Each brick will turn differently and have different options. Alright, and watch when I select all of them together. They're all going to turn on their own separate local pivots. And so you'll also notice over here there is the last tool. Just like the move tool, there is a last tool for this. Now when I have more than one brick selected, I can go ahead and click this brick over here. And this brick over here is the last brick that I clicked, so they will all temporarily be glued to this brick. And I want it to move on its own local axis. So we're going to move all these bricks and turn them based on that local axis. They're all turning with this brick. They're all glued to their designated positions. They're not moving, they're not changing. It's all based on this brick. And that's another handy feature that the rotate tool has. Now you'll also notice down here there's an increment section, just like any of the other tools that I've showed you so far. The increment section allows you to turn in different increments, different degrees. Right now we're turning this by 15 degrees. That's 15 degrees, 15 degrees. And I can go over here and get even slower, even smaller in turning, and I can say I want 7.5 degrees, which is half of 15. Lots of math involved. So this is now 7.5, 7.5, 7.5. I can also go down here and get even more technical with 1. Now this is harder to control because it moves so fast with just a slight mouse movement. So until you're an advanced builder, I'd say avoid 1. Even I try to avoid 1 at some times. So let's go back to 15. It's the default number. It's a nice normal central number. And you'll notice over here I'm rotating. These rotations have changed. This is the exact rotation that it is right now. But I can go over here and click this and say I want it to be at 0. I want to start fresh. I want to be at 0 rotation by 0 rotation by 0 rotation. Now it's just a flat brick. That's how it usually starts out. And now I want to turn it by 15. Now it's turned by 15 degrees. Or I can manually go ahead and turn it by 15 degrees. It's the same thing. So that is the rotate tools, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next tool. So let's move on to the paint tool. And what does the paint tool do? It paints things different colors. And I can paint this right now. I'm painting it really red. I can paint this hot pink. I can paint this lime green. I can paint this any color I want over here, and the name will be displayed down here. Now, since that's a pretty straightforward tool, there's nothing more to it, we're going to move on to the next tool. That is the material tool. And what the material tool does, it allows me to change the texture or the material that it's made out of. Right now it's made out of plastic. I want it to be corroded metal. I want this one to be grass. I want this one right here to be wood. You can see the difference between the textures. Now, out of all the textures, there are only two that have unique properties. That is ice and neon. What ice does is players will slip and slide on the surface of this, and that is the property unique to this texture. Now, as for neon, neon has a glow effect. It's how you create neon signs or lights or anything you want to glow, you use neon for. Now, let's go back to a normal texture. Let's go back to plastic and start with the transparency section. What the transparency section does is now I can go ahead and click on this and I can type, maybe I want a window, I can type 0.5, and now I can see through that. Before it was solid at 0. 0.5 makes it see through. Now I can go up and say, I want to see through it just a little bit more, so let's go 0.8. Now I can see through it much more in detail. I can look through it, it's a window, it could be water, it doesn't matter. But this range is only from 0 to 1. Why that is watch what happens when I put in 1. It becomes completely invisible. You can't go higher than 1 on transparency. It will still be invisible. Doesn't matter. If I go 0, it's completely solid. If I go 1, it's completely invisible. If I go somewhere in between, it will be semi-see-through. And that's the only properties with transparency. So let's go back to 0. Now I'm going to talk about reflectance. Now what reflectance is I can go ahead and make a mirror, and what I want to do is I'm going to put in 0.5, and you'll notice it suddenly became shiny. It's reflecting a little bit of the sky right now. I can see it as if it's a mirror. Now let's go ahead and make it a little bit more reflective. Let's make 0.9. Now you can definitely see the sky, you can see a little bit of the red tint of the color of the brick. But the only problem is this is not an actual mirror. If I move this down, if I was to go in game, you would not be able to see yourself. It doesn't reflect any of the other bricks around it. If I move this one right here, you can't see it. It's not reflecting in it. It doesn't matter. It will always stay that way. It will only ever reflect the sky, and that's all it is. So that's a little downside to the reflectance, but it still works for metal. Alright, so let's go ahead and do this. Now, the reflectance only works for the plastic material, and that's all you can do with it. So let's go ahead and move on to the surface tool. Now, what the surface tool does, this I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on another section or another video, but for now, I'm just going to give you a little preview demo. I can make this studs, I can make this inlets, I can make this smooth, and basically that's all it does. And you can use different parts for different things, like scripting a moving car or welding two parts together that are unanchored. So it's up to you what you want to use that for. I'll go into more depth later on that, so let's just bring this back. And let's move on to the next set of tools. So let's go ahead and begin with the mesh tool. Now the mesh tool, in order to use it, I need a pre-designated, pre-selected tool or part right here. So I've already selected this part. Let's go ahead and add mesh. Now it added the default mesh. You can see right here it's added the mesh to the part, the default head mesh. Well, I don't want that. I want a cylinder mesh instead. So now it's a cylinder, it's still a mesh. Say I want a Robloxian hat, one of the hats that I wear. So let's go ahead and make a file mesh, and it's going to ask for a mesh ID and texture ID. So let's go over here and let's steal my slime tie ID. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it over here, and now we have my slime tie. Well, now we want the texture ID, so let's go ahead and steal that as well. So here's the texture ID, and I'm going to take that and add it to this. And now we have my slime tie completely. It's green and it's all full glory. So maybe I don't want it to be green today. Let's go ahead and put 0 here. So that'll bring it back to its custom form with no texture. Let's go ahead and tint it. I want it to be pink today. So now I have a pink slime tie. Alright, now there's another feature on here where I can go ahead and change the scale. I can change it to 10, I can change this to 4, I can change this to 10 right here, and that will change the size of the mesh. Now by changing the size of the mesh, I do not change the touch box. I only change the actual look of the tie and how big it is. Now I can walk through this right now. I cannot walk through this little box right here. This box is solid unless I toggle it off by collisions. So we need to make that a little bit bigger. So now it's the size of the actual tie. I cannot walk through the tie. I can walk through this part of the tie, but not this part. So that's a little handy feature you need to know about when making meshes. Alright, so there's also this which is offset, and what that means is basically I can do this. I'm going to offset it by 3. So I move this, I've offset it from the touch box by 3 studs. So I can walk straight through this tie right now, but I can't walk through this. Now personally, I haven't found a use for this yet in my building, but it's up to every builder to find their own style, so you're welcome to use it if you want. Now let's move over to the texture tool. Now the texture tool has 2 modes. It has a decal mode and a texture mode, and I'll show you the differences between them. So basically what happens is the decal mode, I can go ahead and add a decal to this, and I can click which side I want it on. Well, right now I want it on the top. So let's go ahead and add the decal to the top. So I've added it, you can see right here, I've added the decal, but now it's asking for an image ID, a decal ID. So we're going to go ahead and take this ID that I've already pre-established, and we're going to copy it and paste it onto this decal right here. So watch what happens when I paste it. Now we have ourselves a decal on this brick. Now I can change the transparency if I want, just like the other tool, and make it semi-see-through, or I can make it solid again. Now I can also go ahead and do this. Watch what happens when I stretch a decal. It just stretches out. It's one tile. It's one thing. Now let's go ahead and delete this and show you a texture. What a texture is when I add this, I click this, and I'm going to add texture to the top part of the brick. I'm going to add texture. So I've added the texture right here, and now I can click here and show you. I'm going to take the same exact image decal as I put on the other one, and now you can see I've put the MakkieMon decal on there. Now watch what happens when I stretch the brick. It becomes an army of MakkieMons. I've now tiled the floor with MakkieMons. It's kind of scary. But you know, this is how I make a tile floor, or a different texture, a wall pattern. I can make any type of pattern with a texture rather than a decal that just stretches out with one tile. Alright, now another fun feature that goes along with the texture section is I can go ahead and change the repeats. So maybe I want to repeat every 4 studs instead. It's a little bit blurry, but you get the idea. So now it's repeating less and less. Or I can make it repeat every 0.1 stud, and I've made something completely uncomprehendable, but it's still repeating that many times. Alright, so I can also change the transparency like the other one, or I can just leave it completely solid, and that is the texture tool. So next is the lighting tool, and before I get into that, I'm going to go ahead and skip the weld tool and put that in another video with the surface tool, because those have their own set of rules. They'll take a little bit of time, so let me know in the comment section down below if you want to see that video, and I'll get that out for you guys when I can. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump in. So right now I need to select a brick to make sure I can add one of these lights. Let's go ahead and add a spotlight. Now if you notice, there's a little bit of light projected right here. I'm going to increase the range for you guys so you guys can see it better. You'll notice that I increased the range to 100, but it defaulted to 60. That's because that's the max range I can project this light. Now I can also go over here and increase the brightness, so I did that. You can see it much better now. And the difference between the range and the brightness is that the range is how far I can project the light. The brightness is how bright it is in a given area. Now right now I have an angle of 90 degrees, I have a 90-degree angle, and that is what I'm projecting light at. I can go ahead and increase this if I want to a 180-degree angle. That's double what I had before. For you mathematicians out there, this is all a part of building. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to a 90-degree angle. It's very clean and easy to use. Now I can also go over here and I can change the color. Say I want it to be a little bit purple, a little bit blue, light. So now I have a purplish blue light. I can also go over to here and I can change the direction. Like I have it now facing the back, I can have it facing the front, and I can also do this little handy feature where this light is on these bricks right here. Watch these two sections of these bricks. I added shadows to them. So any brick that has this light projecting on it, I can add a shadow to by clicking this button right here. So I'm going to get rid of that now, and I'm going to move on to the next light. So let's go ahead and remove this spotlight. So next is the point light, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to the same brick. Now the difference between the spotlight and a point light is that a spotlight only points in one direction, where a point light, it surrounds the brick with light. So watch what happens when I increase the range. Same, it defaults to 60, but it is producing the same amount of light in every direction. It is a 360-degree angle. Now I can go over here just like the other one and change the color if I want. I can change the brightness like the other one. I can also toggle shadows, and since this brick right here is in front of it, there is a shadow casted here, so I can get rid of that. That's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let's move on to the next one. So the next one is the surface light, and I'm going to add that, and it looks very similar to the spotlight. Now it only projects from one single surface. That's the difference between the two. Now I can go ahead and change the color. I can change the range like the other one. I can change the brightness. I can change the angle if I want. And you'll notice very subtle differences between the two lights. I can also change everything else. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Now, that's about the only difference between the two lights here. So that is the end of the lighting tool. We're going to move on to the next decoration tool, which is the Decorate tool. And what the Decorate tool is it has three simple features: smoke, fire, and sparkles. And I'm going to go ahead and add it to this selected brick right here. I'm going to add smoke. Now you can see the smoke rising, and the opacity right here, I can go ahead and change that. That's the same thing as transparency. I'm basically saying that, oh look, this is 1, now I can hardly see through it. And I can put 0, now you can't see it at all. It's the exact opposite of a transparency. Now I can go ahead and put this, I can semi-see through it now. Now, I can also change the color over here if I want. I can change the size of it to the max size, and look how big it got now. That's really, really big. I can also change the velocity, and what that does is how fast the particles, the smoke, is coming out at once. And I'm going to go ahead and decrease the size so you can see this a little better. Let's see. I've decreased the size, so now you can see that it's coming out very fast compared to how it was before. I'm going to put this out at 1 again, and yeah, now you'll see it's all just staying there. It's very slowly coming out as smoke. So that's pretty much the smoke tool. I'm going to go ahead and remove that real quick, and we'll move on to the fire. Now the fire section is pretty simple as well. You basically have, I've lit this brick on fire now. I can go ahead and select this again, and I can go ahead and change this color. Say I want it to be green, and the second color I want it to be dark blue, and you can see a little bit on top there's a dark blue tint and there's a green tint right here. Now I can also increase the heat to maybe 10, and what that does is, let's actually make it bigger. So what that does is I made it rise faster. I made it, it's a lot hotter in a sense. And I can also go over here and increase the size, and that's going to increase the actual size of the flame itself. Now, that's pretty much the simple thing. That's all it is to the fire tool. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that and move on to the sparkles tool. Now the sparkles tool is pretty straightforward. You only have one option. You can just change colors. That's it. That's all there is to it. And that's pretty much the end of the decorate tool. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the tools, and we'll end our tutorial very soon. So the remaining tools are all down here, and since they're very simple, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate them all together, starting with the undo tool. Now undo, I can just go ahead and undo everything we just did in our tutorial, or I can go next to it and redo everything we just undid. I can go ahead and redo it so it's just a plain block. Now, I also can go down here and delete the block. Now, I don't necessarily want to do that right now. I want to bring that block back, so let's click the undo. I can also just go ahead and click delete on my keyboard, which is what I usually do, but every builder has their own preference, so use this if you want. Alright, so I can also go over here and export, and you'll notice that I don't have this enabled right now. I hardly ever use this. I usually just go up to the Roblox files and say export this selection, and that's what I usually do. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the clone tool. Now the clone tool, I can go ahead and click this button right here, and you heard a little noise. I basically just cloned this brick right here, and I can click the move tool and bring it out. It's cloned in the same exact spot, and now we have 2 bricks, and that's all the clone tool does. So that is the end of our F3X tutorial. Thank you for watching. This has been MakkieMon signing off now. Please leave a like or comment, subscribe, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this. So nice seeing you guys. I'm heading off. Later.